Hello. This is a prepaid debit call from
Ricky.
an inmate at the Indiana Department of Corrections, Westville Correctional Facility. To accept this call, press 0.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey.
Hey, I did it. I did it. I killed Abby and Libby.
It's okay, honey, I did it. It's true, honey. I wouldn't sit here and tell you I did it if I didn't. I need you to know that I did this.
This video is for people who want the truth, even if it's boring. The simplest explanation is usually the correct one. The Delphi murders are no exception. But this case took years to solve. Law enforcement made some major mistakes, from poor communication flow to critical errors, and that delay cracked this case wide open for conspiracy theories. This video doesn't play that game. We use Occam's razor, the idea that the simplest solution is often right, and we lean on Hanlon's razor too. Never attribute to malice what can be explained by stupidity. Law enforcement did some stupid things, but there's no grand conspiracy here, especially not involving the families, the sheriff, the Delphi Police Department, state police, FBI, prosecutor, judge, governor, all working together. So if you're ready to set aside the noise, the drama, and the rabbit holes, and actually look at the evidence like a rational adult, this video is for you. Let's go.
After the trial's over and the jury's sent home, there's always the nagging question, did we get the right guy? The evidence and the lawyers aside, there is always a chance that somebody somewhere screwed up. And a lot of people have been fixated on that ever since Richard Allen was convicted last year of killing 2 girls in Delphi, Indiana. The case was infamous. A pharmacy technician guilty of slashing Abigail Williams and Liberty German to death in 2017. Their bodies were found near a local bridge. One girl was naked, the other was wearing her dead friend's clothes. A hooded figure was seen following them the day of the murders, but it took 5 years for police to track him down. And now we're starting to see why they were so convinced they had their man in Richard Allen.
Let's go back to September 2022 for a minute. Since February 14th, 2017, investigators have been trying to identify who murdered 14-year-old Liberty German and 13-year-old Abigail Williams. Over time, through interviews, surveillance footage, forensic evidence, and countless witness statements, law enforcement managed to account for every single person on or near the trails of the Monon High Bridge that day, except one, the man seen in Liberty German's video, Bridge Guy. Libby, at only 14 years old, had the instinct to pull out her phone and start recording this mysterious, creepy man. What she captured on this video was the man who would kill her and her best friend, Abby, just moments after this video was recorded.
See, this is the path that we go down. There's no path going there, so we have to go down here. Hi.
The man just captured in Libby's video, known for years only as Bridge Guy, was eventually identified as Richard Allen, a 44-year-old Delphi resident. He was married, he was a father with a daughter, and worked as an assistant manager and backup pharmacy technician at the local CVS. On the surface, he looked like just another ordinary guy in a small town. But behind closed doors, Richard Allen battled alcoholism, a sexual addiction, and a range of mental health issues. He also had what can only be described as an obsession with the Monon High Bridge. He stated in an interrogation video that he visited the site as often as twice a week. It seems like he collected printed images of the bridge itself and later had his daughter take her senior pictures there. Pretty odd. And yet, despite all of this, Richard Allen managed to stay completely off law enforcement's radar for more than 5 years. So how did this happen? Well, one reason is law enforcement made some serious mistakes, and we'll get into those later. But first, let's focus on what they were trying to do right. From the start, investigators built a checklist, if you will, based on evidence from the scene of the crime, surveillance footage, and witness statements. They weren't just looking for anyone. They were looking for someone who fit 6 specific criteria. 1, they were looking for someone who was physically present at the Delphi Trails and Bridge between 1:30 p.m. and 4 p.m. on February 13th, 2017. 2, they needed to find someone who walked on the Monon High Bridge on February 13th, 2017 between 1:30 and 4 p.m. They needed to find a person who not only was there and walked on the bridge, but was dressed a specific way, wearing a dark jacket with a hood, blue jeans, and a head covering exactly like Bridge Guy was wearing. Number 4, they needed someone who also parked by the old CPS DCS building between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. 5, this person also had to have a dark hatchback with open spoke rims that let daylight through the spokes. And number 6, this person must also own a .40 caliber 6-hour pistol capable of producing the same unique extraction marks as the unspent round found at the crime scene. Now enter Rick Allen. On the evening of February 15th, 2017, just 2 days after Livy and Abby's murders, the haunting image of Bridge Guy splashed across local news and social media.
And welcome back to the News at 11 here on RTV6. We are live in Delphi, Indiana, and we want to give you a shot of that picture once again from police. This is the man they are looking for right now. They say he was out on the trails here on Monday around the same time that 2 teens, Abby Williams, age 13, and Livy German, age 14, were killed out here. They would like to talk to him more about that crime. We made it easy for you to share that right now on our social media streams. Much more on Good Morning Indiana with that as well.
That same night, Richard Allen told his wife, Kathy, that he'd been on the trails that day. On February 16th, 2017, they actually went into the sheriff's office and spoke to an officer. They took down his name, the time that he was there. At this time, he stated he was at the trails from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., and they said an officer will be in contact with them. Then, February 18th, 2017, Indiana Department of Natural Resources, Dan Doolin, fresh off of vacation, followed up. Allen refused to meet at home or at the police station, so they met in a Save-A-Lot parking lot. Talking to Dan Doolin, Rick Allen adjusted his timeline. Now he was saying that he was there from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. He told Doolin he didn't see anything suspicious, no girls, no Bridge Guy. Dan Doolin took the tip sheet and turned it back into police headquarters that day. And somehow, inexplicably, this tip narrative was marked cleared, likely by one of the lead detectives or FBI. So that's right, someone cleared Rick Allen, whether it's because they knew them and thought he was too short and couldn't have committed this crime, or it was a clerical error. Maybe Dan Doolin placed it in the wrong pile where all the cleared tips should go and someone wrote cleared on it. But to me, this is all on the lead investigator. The fact that Rick Allen had reported being on the trails that day, it was never escalated, never flagged, and ultimately forgotten. It stayed buried for more than 5 years until September 2022. That's when Kathy Shank, a retired CPS worker volunteering to help digitize and organize over 14,000 tips, stumbled across a file labeled Richard Allen Whiteman. In her testimony, Shank told the jury how in 2022, she found a box in a desk drawer that contained a lead sheet from February 16th, 2017. It was labeled Richard Allen Whiteman. The tip indicated Allen had been on the trail on February 13th, 2017, the day the girls went missing. Shank realized this tip could be the missing piece, the break they'd been waiting for, so she took it straight to then lead investigator Tony Liggett.
I found that I realized that I had not heard of this person, and I went to the file drawer and found the actual file for Richard Allen Whiteman at that time, as it had been written. And I read the report that Dan Doolin had made after he had spoken with him. And I, as being an investigator, I had looked at some of the statements from the girls that said they had seen a person out at the bridge. And basically, I put the 2 and 2 together, took it to Tony, and we went from there.
Now, with Richard Allen on the radar in September of 2022, after over 5 years, investigators had one job: to verify and clear him, just like they had with everyone else. But would they be able to clear him? Did Richard Allen match the 6 key traits used to identify Bridge Guy?
Police would ultimately focus their attention on Allen after discovering an interview he gave shortly after the murders saying he was on the trails that day. That led to a search of Allen's home, where newly public photos show his black Ford Focus in the garage, the same one prosecutors say that was seen on surveillance cameras near the trail that day. Inside his home, investigators found numerous knives, including box cutters, which is believed to have been the murder weapon. Police also found this blue Carhartt jacket, similar to the one the Bridge Guy was wearing the day the girls were killed. But detectives say the big find was his Sig Sauer P226, which a firearms examiner later connected to an unspent bullet found at the crime scene. The startling find was this Winchester .40 caliber bullet inside a memory box, the same type of ammunition found between the girls' bodies. Prosecutor Nicholas McClellan called it the Bridge Guy starter pack.
So back to the 6 criteria. Number 1. Was Richard Allen on the trails between 1:30 and 4 p.m.? Yes. Libby and Abby were abducted at 2:13 p.m. They were killed by 3:30 p.m. and a muddy and bloody man was seen at 3:56 p.m. walking away from the crime scene down the road and spotted by Sarah Carbaugh. Rick came forward, letting law enforcement know that he was there that day. During an interview, Rick voluntarily told DNR officer Dan Doolin he was at the trails from 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Dan Doolin wrote these notes down, and Rick even confirmed this. In a first press release by Rick Allen's defense attorneys, they admitted that Rick Allen saw Dan Doolin scribbling down notes during the interview. Also, Rick didn't even deny that he said he was at the trails or bridge from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. He was confronted with it in 2022 here, and watch, he doesn't even argue it.
Talked to Lieutenant Doolin, and according to Lieutenant Doolin, the information he got to you was that you were on the trail between 1:30 and 3:30. Does it make any sense? Okay. And that you had parked at the old Farm Bureau building. I think that may have been the old welfare office out there. Well, while at the Freedom Bridge, you saw 3 females and noted that one was taller and had black or brown long hair. This is basically what he had written down. Okay. And maybe even got some information about your phone or something like that. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. So now you understand everything. So
yes, Rick Allen was there that day. There was witnesses that spotted him. His car was shown on video. He admits to being there, and everyone agrees that he was there. All right, so Richard Allen was on the trails between 1:30 p.m. and 4 p.m. That's a check. Back to the criteria. Number 2. Did Rick Allen walk out onto the Monon High Bridge? Yes. It's confirmed by multiple sources, including Rick Allen himself.
I wasn't about that, so I went home, and I remember it was a fairly warm day, or warmer than normal, so I think I just put a jacket on and went back out to the trails. I remember walking down to the bridge, walked down to High Bridge, always went out just a little ways, not all the way, went out a little ways and watched the fish. See if I seen any fish down there because I like fishing, and walked back and sat on the, when you turn around and go down the other fork, there's a bench that overlooks, and sat there for a few minutes and walked back out and left.
On October 13th, 2022, during a police interrogation, Allen admitted that he walked onto the first platform of the Monon High Bridge that day to look at the fish. Also, at 1:53 p.m., Betsy Blair, an adult witness, saw a man matching Bridge Guy's appearance standing on platform 1 of the bridge. This is the exact spot Allen said he stood. Her Fitbit data and surveillance video confirm her route and timing.
There may have been somebody on the bridge or something when I was coming back.
We also know that he was on the bridge because he's on Libby's video at 2:13 p.m. It shows a man dressed exactly like him walking on the bridge. So Bridge Guy is on the bridge, and so was Richard Allen. It's not too hard to do the math here. The bottom line is Betsy Blair saw him, Libby recorded him, Rick Allen admitted to being on the bridge the same day that the girls were killed, and we already know he was there from 1:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. So yes, Richard Allen walked out onto the Monon High Bridge. We could check that off the list.
Usually when we go, we walk down the High Bridge and walk back and walk down the other side and come back. I mean, it wasn't a ritual, but...
So criteria number 3. Was Richard Allen dressed like Bridge Guy? Yes. This one's simple and damning. Richard Allen admitted to wearing blue jeans, a dark Carhartt-style jacket with a hood, possibly a head covering. And yes, I'm sure that most of the men in Delphi own a dark jacket, blue jeans, head covering, black boots. But who wore that outfit that day during that time while at the trails in High Bridge? Just one.
Okay, as you well know, we have pictures of an individual who was on the bridge, and to some great degree, you describe that individual as wearing, yourself as wearing blue jeans, a jacket of the same color as that. It described a hat. It's hard to see the shoes, but they're kind of brown. Okay, and this is a picture that was taken with the phone of one of the girls. Okay, I understand that. And the question needs to be, is that you? If it was taken with the girl's phone, that is absolutely, I mean, it's not me, but I never have met these girls before, so even if I thought it looked like me, if it was taken with the girl's phone, there's no way it could be. I've never met them. I've never seen them.
Most importantly, all 5 witnesses confirmed under oath that the man they saw that day was the man in Libby's video. The man we know is Bridge Guy. Now ask yourself this. Richard Allen says he was there at the trails that day. He admits to walking to the trails, but somehow not one single person said they saw CVS Rick Allen, the friendly guy from the pharmacy. And let's just use some common sense here. The only unidentified man on the trails who walks out onto the bridge during the murder time window happens to be wearing the exact same clothes as the killer. He was dressed as Bridge Guy because he was Bridge Guy. Number 4. Did Richard Allen park at the old CPS building? Yes. Richard Allen told investigators he parked by an old building near the trail entrance. He even pointed it out on a map, confirming that he did park at the old CPS building.
Over here somewhere, probably. Well, that's one of the parking areas. Okay, and then or it would have been, there was a old building somewhere over, this map was taken back when the building was still there. And this is the building that was on the bridge, the trail side of the bridge. Okay. So down at you went this way. I think you went down this way and like there was an underpass or something. Yep, that's right. And then there's a building right there. You can see it. Okay. So it would either been there or there. Okay. All right. Very good. Which way do you think?
Despite him calling it something else. And the abandoned CPS DCS building off of CR 300 North, the same location police asked about publicly in 2019, urging anyone who parked there on February 13th between 12 and 5 to come forward.
We're seeking the public's help to identify the driver of a vehicle that was parked at the old CPS DCS welfare building in the city of Delphi that was abandoned on the east side of County Road 300 North, next to the Hoosier Heartland Highway, between the hours of noon to 5. If you were parked there or know who was parked there, please contact the officers at the command post.
Yet, Allen never came forward. Instead, he would keep that car parked in his garage, or when he would take it to work, he would make sure that he parked backwards to conceal the license plate, the same as he did when he parked at the CPS building on the day he killed Libby and Abby. So yes, he parked at the old CPS building. There's surveillance footage from Hoosier Harvest Store. A camera positioned off the highway shows a dark-colored vehicle with open-spoke rims driving eastbound at 1:27 p.m., just moments before the juvenile witnesses encountered Bridge Guy / Rick Allen. Investigators confirmed that this vehicle matched Rick Allen's 2016 black Ford Focus SE hatchback. Bottom line, Richard Allen's car was seen arriving at 1:27 p.m. He later admitted to parking at the CPS parking lot, and nobody else came forward to claim they parked there because Rick was the only one they hadn't identified to be there, and he stayed quiet then. So yes, Rick Allen parked at the CPS building the day of the murders. All right, number 5. Did Rick Allen have access to a dark hatchback with open spoke rims? Yes. Allen admitted to owning the 2016 Ford Focus SE hatchback, which matches the car on the video exactly. Color, model, wheel design, and body shape. Let this sink in. That specific model was the only one registered in Carroll County at that time. Rick Allen didn't just have access to a matching vehicle, he had the only one in the entire county. And that car was caught driving to the old CPS building at 1:27 p.m., less than an hour before the abduction of Libby and Abby. All right, the final piece of criteria, number 6. Did Rick Allen own a .40 caliber Sig Sauer capable of producing the unique extraction marks on the unspent round found between the bodies? Yes, ballistics testing confirmed it. The bullet had been cycled through Allen's Sig Sauer. That unspent round came from his gun. The unspent .40 caliber round found between the victims is one of the most damning pieces of evidence against Richard Allen because it places him at the crime scene. There's no other evidence that was found that places anyone else at the crime scene. That's why it's so significant. And this is what they call a nexus, ladies and gentlemen. When a bullet or cartridge is cycled through a gun, whether it's fired or not, it picks up tiny, unique marks from the gun's ejector and extractor mechanisms.
Different ways of conducting that type of analysis. If a bullet is fired out of a gun, then you can conduct an analysis on the projectile itself as it twists and comes out of a barrel. There may be different nicks and scrapes and things on the bullet. But any bullet casing that's been ejected out of a semi-automatic handgun, whether that gun has been fired or not, it is pushed into the bottom part of the barrel, and then when the slide is racked and the bullet's ejected, even if it hasn't been fired, there's still an extractor that grabs the edge of that bullet, that flips it out, and that process often, not always, but often leaves marks and dents, and those marks and dents can be very specific to the weapon that it came out of. So even if it hasn't been fired, in a laboratory, they can go back, put a similar type of shell casing in it in a laboratory environment, eject that round, and then compare the two.
Those microscopic marks are like fingerprints, and firing the weapon in a controlled lab actually makes those marks easier to see without altering the original signature. That's standard forensic science. It's exactly how it's supposed to be done. Melissa Oberg, the Indiana State Police firearms examiner who conducted the analysis, has examined over 66,000 firearms across her 17-year career. Guess how accurate she is? 100%. She's never made a mistaken identification, not once. Oberg used a rigorous 3-level forensic process following ASTM and NIJ standards. This is why she's always 100% accurate. She concluded with certainty that Allen's 6 hours cycled the unspent round. No other gun, not in Carroll County, not anywhere else, left those exact marks. In her own words, I was able to identify the pistol as having cycled the cartridge. Her findings were later independently verified by a second expert. This is direct evidence, physical proof that Richard Allen had his gun out during the murders. Let's also not forget that in one of Rick Allen's confessions, he admitted to pulling his gun on the girls and doing something with it. The bullet confirms his confession. The science confirms the story. And for the planted a magic bullet crowd, let's be real. The round was logged, bagged, and stored under strict supervised chain of custody. The defense even cross-examined Oberg and had full access to the report and offered zero credible rebuttal. All they did was look at pictures of the shell casing in the gun. The bullet was a match. And no, this isn't junk science. This is good evidence.
I just wanted to apologize to you.
What's going on, sweetheart?
I did it.
You did
no,
what?
I did it.
What?
I killed Abby. I killed Abby and Libby.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
Now let's talk about the damning direct evidence in this case, Richard Allen's own words. Now this isn't a false confession. False confessions are like things that are hearsay that you're hearing Kagan Klein claim to being there. Why this is different is Rick Allen was actually there that day during the time of the murders, and he had no motive to confess. Kagan Klein had a motive. He was trying to get a reduced sentence. He threw a Hail Mary out there. If they found something in the river, maybe he would get his sentence reduced. No harm, no foul. Kagan Klein also had an alibi. He was at home on his phone, actively using it, doing things, not just having it sit there, but he was doing the same creepy shit that he normally did.
The connection with the Kleins and Rich Allen. Well, immediately we went back through all of the Klein devices, all the information that we had. We went back to see if there was any connection to Richard Allen whatsoever. Then once we obtained Richard Allen's phones and that data, we went through to see the opposite side, if there was any connection to the Kleins on that side. And we interviewed several people that either knew Richard Allen or Tony Klein, both, or knew both of them. And after everything, after all the data that we reviewed, after everyone we talked to, we never found a direct connection between the two or anything linking to the crime, linking the Kleins to the crime like we did Allen.
Allen confessed to killing Libby and Abby over 60 times across nearly a year in letters, phone calls, therapy sessions, and spontaneous conversations. He told his wife, his mother, corrections officers, therapists, and fellow inmates. This all came after he claimed that he found God and was reading the Bible. It seemed like he had a guilty conscience and he wanted to clear his conscience. And during these confessions, he wasn't psychotic. Both Dr. Monica Walla, a licensed psychologist, and Dr. John Martin, a forensic psychiatrist, confirmed he was mentally competent during his incriminating confessions. One of the most detailed confessions happened on May 3rd, 2023, during a session with Dr. Walla. Allen described the murders in chilling detail. And for all of the idiots out there who think that me or Gray Hughes or Tom Webster or anyone else, including the state, were feeding information to Dr. Walla about a van, go find any such talk from any of us before May 3rd, 2023. I bet you can't do it, because there is none. And yeah, people spoke about vans in this case, but they never spoke about the killer being interrupted by Brad Weber's van during the time of the murders. Prove me wrong. Okay, so May 3rd. This was a session between Rick Allen and Dr. Monica Walla. During the session, Rick stated, "I saw the girls on the trails, followed them across a bridge and did something with my gun. I ordered them down the hill, across the creek. I wanted to sexually assault them, but didn't. I cut their necks, made sure they were dead, covered their bodies with branches. I stayed off the trails so I wouldn't be seen, then continued to live my life normally ever since." He also stated, "I committed these murders on my own." Let that sink in, conspiracy theorist. "I committed these murders on my own," says Rick Allen. "I made sure they were dead so they didn't suffer. I killed Abby and Libby." Rick Allen explained what happened in a way that someone under psychosis would be incapable of doing. He described the chain of events very coherently and logically. He left his parents' house that morning. He went home to change. He drove to the trails. He saw the girls. He pulled out a gun. He led them down the hill. They crossed the creek. He slashed their throats, covered them with branches. He escaped unseen. He said his intentions were sexual. He thought the girls were older and admitted he was molested himself and had a sex addiction.
What's going on, sweetheart?
I did it.
You did
No,
what?
I did it.
What?
I killed Abby and Libby.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't, Darren.
Yes, I did.
Don't say
I don't know why.
No, you didn't.
Was Rick Allen really in psychosis? Let's start with the big if. If Richard Allen was truly in psychosis, and that's a big if, then we need to ask what caused it. But before we go there, let's be real. The evidence strongly suggests he was faking it. Here's why. When asked, Rick told his wife that he was well.
It's true, honey.
No, it's not. You're not well, sweetheart.
I'm well.
No. No, you don't.
Yes, I am, honey. I just hope that you'll still love me, because I may only, if I get the electric chair, or if I get the death penalty.
No.
In a prison call with his wife, the person who knows him best, she told him he wasn't well, that the prison might be messing with his medication. And what did Rick say? "No, I'm well." That is not someone in the middle of a mental break. Also, another inmate overheard him say that he was faking it. He said that he was just acting crazy, but he's not crazy. Guards, under oath, reported that somehow Rick had the ability to turn off his crazy and turn it back on. When Rick was acting crazy, they warned him that he might lose some of his privileges. So what did he do? Boom. All of a sudden, he was cured. He could snap out of it. That's not psychosis, that's manipulation, which is classic Rick Allen, right? Power, control, deceit. And yet, the defense wants you to believe he only confessed because the prison conditions broke him. Come on. These are the same people who said that white supremacist Viking wizards killed 2 white girls. They wore invisibility cloaks and snuck back into the crime scene just to plug in headphones for no reason at all. And also, speaking of the lies that the defense told, Rick was not in solitary confinement for months at a time. It was an isolation cell where he could be monitored, protected, not punished. That's standard procedure. So Rick didn't confess because he lost his mind. He confessed because he couldn't carry the weight anymore. He confessed because he was guilty. And guilt eats people alive. You don't have to take my word for it. Research shows that guilt can be a powerful psychological trigger, especially in people used to control and manipulation. When that control is stripped away, like in prison, guilt has nowhere to hide. It surfaces, it corrodes, it breaks them down. Rick wasn't broken by bad conditions. He was broken by the truth. He confessed over 60 times to over 20 people, including people that he loved, and it just fell on deaf ears. So this wasn't psychosis. This was a man who could no longer hold back the weight of what he did. Now, we're going to listen to a prison phone call between Rick Allen and his mom. Now ask yourself, would an innocent man call his mother, admit that he killed 2 girls, and beg her to still love him? That's not a normal thing, and that's not fear of prison. That's fear of the truth coming out at trial. He knew the evidence was going to make him look guilty, so he was trying to get ahead of it with his mom and his wife. He wanted to make sure that they still loved him while he unburdened himself with guilt. Let's listen to that call now.
Oh, how you doing?
Oh, I'm all right, I guess.
Yeah. It's good to hear your voice.
So did Kathy tell you that I did it?
We're not going to discuss this, okay? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. We love you, you know that, don't you?
Regardless?
Yes.
And do you know if Kathy's okay?
Kathy's doing okay. We've been holding each other up.
I'm just worried that you guys aren't going to love me because of the fact that I said that I did it.
Ricky, I just know you're not in a good place right now. And I'm praying for you, and we will always love you. No matter what. But just saying it doesn't mean you did it.
Well, it does when I did.
Rick, don't talk like this. I think they're just messing with you.
No, Mom, they're not. I love you, though.
What are you doing? I love you too, hon. I just know you don't have it in you to do something like that.
Mom. I wouldn't sit here and tell you I did it if I didn't.
So Rick Allen's confessions contain details only the killer would know. And note, psychosis does not magically give you knowledge or details that only the killer would know about, such as a van pulling onto the private drive during the time of the murders, a box cutter being used in the murders, that there would be no visible trauma from sexual assault despite his sexual motive. The crime left no outward signs of sexual assault. Only the killer would know this. He knew that they crossed a creek, and in the crime scene photos, while looking at the pants that Abby has on, you could clearly see they are damp. You could also see a pale, chalky band of limestone sediment around the upper thighs. It's from the creek. The photo makes it obvious that the girls crossed the creek. That's something only the killer would know. So why these confessions prove guilt? 1, they were voluntary, uncoerced. There was no pressure, no interrogation, no incentive. Allen confessed during private therapy sessions, casual conversations, phone calls, and letters. Never during police questioning or under duress. He wasn't being interrogated during these confessions. That level of spontaneous admission made repeatedly points to authentic guilt, not a forced or rehearsed story. 2, Rick Allen was consistent for his 60 confessions across 24 people over 9 months. These weren't one-time slips. Allen confessed more than 60 times to 24 different people over nearly a year, and the core details never changed. Told the same story. Followed the girls, pulled a gun, took them down the hill, crossed the creek, and killed them. He was pretty consistent. Across time, people in emotional states, it's extremely rare in false confessions that you're so consistent. 3, Rick Allen was sane. This was confirmed by licensed mental health professionals, Dr. Walla and Dr. John Martin. Both evaluated Allen and confirmed he was mentally competent during the confessions. His statements were logical, coherent, and detailed, all signs of sanity. He wasn't delusional or confused. He was clear, calm, and emotionally aware. You could hear in the confessions. 4, accurate. Rick's confessions contained details only the killer would know. Allen described crime-specific facts that had never been released publicly. A van pulling onto a private drive, visibly from the scene where he was, a box cutter as a weapon, the girls crossed the creek, proven by forensic sediment on clothing, and that there were no visible sexual trauma. Despite his sexual intent, these aren't guesses, they're precise, killer-only details. 5, Rick Allen's apologies sounded sincere. They were driven by guilt, faith, and emotional collapse. Before his confessions began, Allen said he had found God. He started reading the Bible in prison and was actively seeking forgiveness. When he began confessing, he wept. He told his wife and mother he had committed the murders, begged them to still love him, and asked if they could ever forgive him. He admitted he was selfish, a coward, and said he hoped he burned in hell for what he did. These confessions were filled with shame and completely unprompted, like he needed to get something off his chest. The kind of collapse that only comes from someone haunted by the truth. Also, if prison conditions made people falsely confess, Westville would be full of killers saying, I did it, but it's not. It's just Richard Allen, because only Richard Allen knew what only the killer could know, and only Richard Allen has been drowning in his guilt of what he did. Let's cover some of the lies that Ricky told. Innocent people don't need alibis that shift like sand. They don't hide where they parked, change their height, or lie to their wife for 5.5 years.
On the bridge.
I told them I was on the bridge. I went out to the first trestle.
Oh, okay.
That first
I
thing
don't remember you telling me that. You told me, so I told you weren't on it, but I didn't.
It doesn't, hon, you're not in any trouble. You didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.
Right.
Huh?
I didn't know you were on it. I'm sorry.
Well, don't worry about it.
You told me you weren't.
Huh?
You told me you weren't, so I just was.
No, I told you that I walked.
Okay.
I love you, baby.
But Rick Allen did all of that and more. When you look at the full picture, his lies aren't random or harmless. They're strategic. They follow a pattern, deflect attention, erase details, and distance himself from the crime until the evidence backed him into a corner. Let's walk through the lies that Rick told and ask yourself, if he were innocent, why would he lie about any of this? 1, he lied about his alibi. Rick Allen changed his timeline 3 times. First, he said he was there at the trails and bridge from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Then he changed that a couple of days later to 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Then years later, during his October 22nd interrogation, he suddenly claimed he was only there from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. The problem? Surveillance footage, witness sightings, and his own earlier statements completely destroy the 12 to 1:30 p.m. claim. And Tom Webster, who's been to the trails and been to the trial, and who's covered this case extensively and done a great job, I'm going to play part of a video that he just did. It'll be linked in the description.
Rick's noon to 1 p.m. timeline makes no sense because he never encountered 5 females who were there during that time. One of those females was by herself. Her name was Betsy. She testified that she went to the trails often to do 3 loops around the trail for exercise. Her car was captured on the Hoosier Harvestor video surveillance camera at 12:02 p.m., which is a few seconds from arriving at the parking lot across from the Mears family farm, and her car was later seen on video leaving for about a half-hour bathroom break at 1:15 p.m. So she was on the trail approximately 1 hour and 13 minutes, which would have been the same time Rick was there, at least according to his 2022 timeline. She was seen leaving at 1:15 p.m. She testified at the trial that she always went the same route 3 times on the trail. She would park at the Mears lot, make a left at the Mears intersection, walk all the way down to Monon High Bridge. At the barricade, she would turn around, come back to the Mears intersection. From there, she would go down to the lower trail, but not go all the way down to the creek, come back to the Mears intersection, walk to Freedom Bridge, turn around, come back to the Mears intersection, and repeat that 2 more times. On the day of the murders, she did it 2 loops between 12:02 and 1:15. Then she came back from 1:46 to 2:19. She wore a Fitbit exercise tracker, which corroborated this. Based on that route, Betsy passed the bench at the Mears intersection 7 times between 12:02 and 1:15 p.m. Rick said he sat on that bench during that time, but Betsy never saw any men until she saw a bridge guy on platform 1 around 1:53 p.m., according to my estimates of her arriving at 1:46. She would have seen Rick on the trail, at Monon High Bridge, or any of the 6 benches if he arrived at noon and left at 1 or later. She did not. This proves Rick lied about his noon arrival.
He lied to law enforcement about his alibi, something that many wanted to crucify Ron Logan for, despite Ron only lying about who drove him that day, not about his alibi. So now that we have someone legit lying about their alibi, that should mean Rick is at least as guilty as people thought Ron Logan was, right? But wait, there's more lies. 2, and this is a big one. Rick Allen lied to his wife. Rick told Kathy Allen that he never went out to the Monon High Bridge that day. But in a police interrogation on October 26, 2022, with Kathy sitting right next to him, Rick had to admit for the first time that he did walk out onto the bridge. That was a moment that Kathy realized her husband has been lying to her all this time. Another lie that Rick told. He lied about being on his phone. During his February 18, 2017 interview with Officer Dan Doolin, Rick handed over his phone information, and Rick claimed that he was looking at a stock ticker app while on the trails. But when police pulled the geofence data, there was no record of Rick Allen's phone even being there. It appears he left it at home, likely on purpose to avoid being tracked. So, in 2022, he changed his story. It used to be that he was on his stock ticker, but maybe he figured out that wouldn't be a good idea. So then he changed it to him going out looking at fish. So why did he lie about having it with him in the first place? The next lie was, this was after the murders, he lied about his height. Shortly after the murders, Rick Allen changed the height listed on his fishing license, bumping it up by 2 full inches. He went from 5'4" to 5'6". People don't grow 2 inches in their 40s. So why would he lie and change his height right after the murders? At first, Rick never mentioned parking by the old CPS building. Only after police footage emerged from the Hoosier Harvest store showing his car did he finally admit he parked near an old building. And the cherry on top is he refused to take a lie detector test. When investigators offered him a polygraph, Rick declined. Now, refusing a polygraph isn't an automatic sign of guilt, but when stacked on top of all those other lies, it paints a very clear picture. He knew he was lying, and he didn't want the lie detector to detect those lies. Bottom line, Rick Allen didn't just lie once. He lied early, he lied often, and he lied about critical facts that only the killer would need to hide. If he were innocent, why lie at all? The reality is he had no alibi during the murders. Not one person testified that Rick was with them. His mom and sisters had the opportunity, but nope, they didn't. Rick also got rid of his phone that he had in 2017. It was the only one missing out of more than a dozen collected from a search. Surveillance footage from Main Street in Delphi was turned over to the defense team. They had it, but they never used it. Why? Because there was no video showing him arriving or leaving around noon or driving around town from 1:30 to 4 p.m. And no one framed Allen with that timeline. If investigators wanted to frame Allen, they wouldn't say 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. They would say 1:30 to 4 p.m. because they want to tie him to the person walking down the street at 3:56 p.m., all muddy and bloody. So if they were to make something up, they wouldn't say he was gone by 3:30 p.m. And some people say they only trust what they could see or hear, so they accept Allen's October 2022 video interview where he claims that he was there from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. because they hear it. But if you believe what you hear, then you should be believing that the audio recordings where Richard Allen says, "I did it, I killed Libby and Abby," you should believe those are true too, because you could hear it, right? Debunking the no one identified Richard Allen argument. Some people claim Richard Allen must be innocent because no one identified him as Bridge Guy in such a small town like Delphi. Here's why that argument is completely wrong. 1. Bridge Guy, Richard Allen, was disguised. Witnesses describe Bridge Guy as wearing multiple layers, including a large jacket, multiple jackets, walking fast with his head down and covering the lower half of his face, likely with a gaiter or scarf that went up to just under his nose. That's not someone you easily identify in a lineup.
It was really nice out and the sun was shining and it was like, oh, it would be a good day to go take pictures up at High Bridge because I always take pictures up there.
So you're hanging out down there and then you were walking away from Monon High Bridge and you saw the guy that we now know to be Bridge Guy coming toward you.
Right. The people with me were like looking at their phones and stuff and I looked up and I saw him. I was like waved at him and he just like a rude and unfriendly look. So I just waved at him because it was a fellow person walking on a trail, you know?
Yeah.
And he had a lot of jackets on. It wasn't particularly cold. Like he had a big jacket and a hat and a thing over his face. And
a thing over his face?
Yeah. And it wasn't cold enough for all that.
Wasn't that weird?
It was weird.
My wife was working, so I went over there and spent the day, not the day, I spent the morning with them. My sisters come over and they were going to go eat lunch and stuff, and I wasn't about that, so I went home. And I remember it was a fairly warm day, or warmer than normal, so I think I just put a jacket on and went back out to the trails.
Of course, no one pointed out in court and said, "Hey, that's the guy." Defense attorneys would have shredded anyone who tried. This is exactly why criminals conceal their identity when committing a crime. It's not rocket science. 2. All the witnesses saw Bridge Guy. So, witness testimony is flawed, but every single witness shown a picture of Bridge Guy said, under oath, that is a person they saw. They testified under perjury. They described the man on the trails at the same time and place Richard Allen admitting to being. He wore the same clothes as Bridge Guy and walked to the same location. Richard Allen even described the witnesses he passed. A small group of girls, one taller with dark hair, babysitting a much younger one, looked like sisters, which exactly matches the group the witnesses confirmed.
When I was approaching the trail, or the trailhead, I guess is what I'd call it, there was 3 girls walking off the trail. And I just remember it looking like one of them was probably watching, not babysitting, but watching the other 2 because they looked a little younger. And they looked very similar. I don't know if they were sisters or whatever, but the other one didn't necessarily. But I remember seeing them walking off.
So yes, the witnesses saw Bridge Guy. They just didn't know his name or what he looked like under those layers. 3. Richard Allen, the state's #1 witness. This is a big one. When people say no one placed Richard Allen at the scene, that is false. Richard Allen himself placed himself there. In multiple recorded confessions, calls, letters, and verbal statements. So yes, someone identified Richard Allen. Richard Allen did. 4. CVS Rick was never spotted there. If Richard Allen was innocent and just taking a walk, looking at fish, why didn't any witness say they saw a guy from CVS there? No one said, "I saw a man in normal clothes and I recognized him from CVS, but I also saw a Bridge Guy." That never happened. No one saw Rick Allen, the CVS worker. So if CVS Rick was there, but nobody saw CVS Rick, and Bridge Guy was there, but nobody identified Bridge Guy, come on, you could do the math, I hope. Rick Allen wasn't anywhere else during the murders. He had no alibi, no receipts, no phone data, no Wi-Fi activity, no surveillance, no text, no wife or mother alibying him for the murder window. Just a story that he went to Mexico, Indiana that morning, not during the time of the murders, and his phone was magically turned off. His vehicle was caught on surveillance arriving at the CPS building at 1:30 p.m., not leaving. This places him there during the window of the murders. So Richard Allen put himself at the scene. He identified himself. He's the state's best witness. He described details only the killer would know, like the lack of sexual assault and the van that pulled into a private driveway visible only from the crime scene. So yes, someone identified Bridge Guy, and that someone was Richard Allen. I'm going to go over the timeline just a little bit. I made a completely different video about it. It goes into more detail. The most important thing that the timeline revealed to us is Rick Allen was the only man at the Bridger Trails during the time of the abduction and murders. At 1:40 p.m., 4 juvenile girls encounter a man. He had his hood up, his face partially covered, wearing multiple jackets, but the outer layer looked to be a dark jacket, so he was dressed exactly like Bridge Guy. Allen later describes a group of girls that he saw, one taller, watching over younger ones. They were like sisters, and that's exactly what the group was. 3 were sisters, and 1 was much younger. These details were never public. You could only know that if you saw those girls together. From 1:50 to 1:55 p.m., Betsy Blair sees a man on Platform 1 of Monon High Bridge, the exact location Allen later admitted standing at, saying that he was looking at fish. Blair saw someone in the same outfit as Bridge Guy, and Allen basically confirmed he saw her too. So that's 2 independent witnesses placing Allen on the trails between 1:30 and 2 p.m. And at 2:13 p.m., Libby captures Bridge Guy on video. The video recorded by Libby at 2:13 p.m. was on the exact bridge that Rick Allen said he was on that day, dressed exactly how Rick Allen described himself as dressing that day. This is verified by metadata from Libby's video. We know exactly when and where that video was recorded. Also, the man on the video looks exactly like Richard Allen. Also, listen, because Bridge Guy's voice sounds exactly like Rick Allen's voice.
If you go down and go down the hill, down the hill. If you go down and go down the hill, guys, down the hill, guys, go down and go, guys, down the hill, guys, go down and go, guys, down the hill, guys, go down and go, guys, down the hill, guys, go down and go.
Debunking one person couldn't have done this crime. Let's keep it simple. 1 man on the bridge, 1 killer. For there to be anything more than 1 killer, you need evidence to prove that. The evidence, our own eyes, show us there's 1 killer, 1 Bridge Guy. If you see 1 man on the bridge and somehow conclude there were 2 killers, then you're either terrible at counting or you have some serious evidence to present. And good luck with that, because there is 0 evidence pointing to multiple killers. Everything we know points to 1 person committing these murders. This isn't a movie, it's real life. Now, because the Delphi Murders trial wasn't televised, not everyone is familiar with the full scope of the evidence or expert testimony, but with a little research, even just reading trial coverage from reporters who were in the courtroom, you can learn more about the crime scene and start to see how the facts make one thing clear. 1 person did this. Let's look at the actual evidence. Major Pat Cicero, a bloodstain pattern expert, testified that Abby Williams had no blood on her hands or arms. He said this was likely because she was either unconscious or restrained during the attack. Now remember, Rick Allen had a gun, and that's how he controlled their movements. So how could 1 person kill 2 girls with a gun and a box cutter? So he likely pulled the gun out on the bridge, forcing Abby and Libby to go down the hill. As he did, he racked the slide to chamber a round. He then walked them across the creek at gunpoint. Compliance is easy when you're holding a firearm. Entire banks are robbed by 1 person with a gun, sometimes just even with a note. Then they arrived at the actual crime scene, which is a bowl-shaped area in the woods, hidden and isolated. Still, at gunpoint, Rick demands the girls to stop and undress. He racks the gun again, not to reload, but to intimidate them, ejecting the previously chambered round. The shell casing is what investigators later found at the scene. The girls comply and undress. This matches a sexual control fantasy, a crime pattern that is almost always committed by a single offender. Then Rick could have instructed Abby to put on Libby's clothes, which would be a calculated, humiliating power move that further supports this being about domination and control, not just violence. Now, while Abby is distracted getting dressed, Rick incapacitates her. He could have tied her up, or he could have knocked her out. He could have done a chokehold on her. Lots of possibilities. 1 knockout blow. Rick may have struck Abby in the back of the head with the gun. While no visible head wound was reported, mild to moderate blunt force trauma doesn't always leave external marks, especially if the death occurred shortly after. 2 a blood choke. Rick could have applied a rear naked choke, a technique used in the military and MMA, as well as law enforcement. Unconsciousness occurs in about 6 to 10 seconds, and it leaves little to no physical evidence if not held long enough to kill. Rick was in the military. And we've seen photos of him wearing UFC shirts. So we could understand that he knew how to do this. And I could do it with one hand. I could choke someone out from behind with one hand, no problem. 3, physical paralysis. Fight, flight, freeze response. So Rick already had a gun. He could have told the girls, if you move, I'll shoot you. One girl sees the other being attacked and freezes. This is a real and common trauma response. These weren't trained fighters. They were 2 frightened, naked teenage girls completely under his control. This could cause involuntary paralysis, which is a well-documented phenomenon in extreme fear or assault scenarios. Victims cannot move or resist. Their body shuts down. Major Pat Cicero, a bloodstain pattern expert, testified that Abby Williams was found with her hands raised vertically, an extremely unusual position that he had never seen before, suggesting that she was likely bound or restrained somehow when she was killed. Forensic pathologist Dr. Roland Kerr testified about a faint mark on Abby Williams' face that could have been caused by tape. So this detail suggests a real possibility that Abby may have been gagged or restrained during the attack. While not confirmed, it's possible Allen restrained one of the girls while he focused on the other, maybe even using their own clothing or improvised materials. We still don't know what was underneath his neck that he was carrying here. Could have been a rope, we don't know. But it would explain Abby's passive position if she was bound, and again, no help is needed to do this. So now with Abby unconscious or restrained, Rick could easily walk over to Libby and return to Abby, who is still unconscious or barely responsive, and then he kills her without any resistance. He then drags Libby's body about 20 feet, as shown by blood transfer pattern on a nearby tree, and positions both girls together. Said Rick Allen covers them with branches, and Rick then leaves the scene, and that's it. And for those people still clinging to the idea that there was more than one killer because they think the girls were removed from the scene and brought back, that is dumb. Why would anyone do that? Killers don't bring victims back to the exact spot they abducted them, especially not while searchers are walking around nearby on the same day or even the next day. That didn't happen. All the blood scene evidence from Major Pat Cicero proves that they were killed where they were found. Steve from True Crime Web, retired law enforcement officer, proved this point with the physical demonstration that one person could have pulled this off. He showed how a full-grown adult can drag another adult through the rough terrain with ease. No lifting, no fireman carry, just a basic shoulder drag. It works, even in the woods. Despite what Bob Mata wants you to believe in his latest fantasy, no, the leaves don't fly everywhere, the dirt doesn't explode, you could hardly tell that anyone's been dragged. They know Libby was dragged based off of the blood patterns on the bottom of her leg and foot. So this was one man, not a group. The type of crime screams single offender. It was a private sexual fantasy about power and control. Bridge guy is alone in the video. Only one suspicious man was ever seen on the trails that day. No credible witness ever described 2 perpetrators. And most importantly, there's no forensic evidence of a second person. No identified cars, no identified people, no extra footprints, no Viking wizards, no obese basement-dwelling pedos hiking up and down those hills. No witnesses account for seeing more than one person. One bridge guy equals one killer. The facts, the forensics, the logic, they all point to one conclusion. Richard Allen acted alone. So why are people still trying to make this bigger than it is? This case isn't complicated. It's just disturbing, and some people like living in that disturbing realm of things. Or they don't want to face the truth. But here it is. One man, one sick sexual fantasy that was planned. That man was Richard Allen. Accept it and move on. No DNA, no problem. There is no DNA evidence that proves Rick Allen did it, therefore he is innocent. That's the latest excuse being pushed by the Richard Allen is innocent because corruption crowd. So, question, since there's no DNA, does that mean that nobody killed the girls? No, that's stupid. And I thought Rick Allen was framed. He was a patsy, right? So why didn't they plant DNA if they were framing him? That'd be pretty easy to do, right? In only about 10% of murder cases, the suspect's DNA is recovered, and the number drops even lower for outdoor homicides. Abby and Libby were killed outdoors near the creek, and their bodies were exposed for roughly 20 hours through in extremely cold temperatures, high humidity, and lots of wind. Well, DNA does not survive that well in those conditions. Not on clothes, not on skin, not on leaves, not on soil. Also, a lot of this evidence was thrown into the creek, which damages DNA evidence. So of course there's a lack of DNA, and that's normal. If anything, expecting pristine DNA under those circumstances, that would be suspicious. That would look like a frame job. But this isn't some CSI episode where they lift perfect prints off a leaf. It's the real world. In the real world, science matters. So no, Richard Allen didn't get off the hook because there wasn't DNA, because everything else proves he was there. The timeline, the vehicle, the clothing, the gun, the confession, the lies. The only thing missing is a shred of common sense from the people still yelling conspiracy. But sure, go ahead and blame the FBI, Carroll County, and Viking Wizards. The rest of us will stick to facts. Conclusion. This case isn't complex, it's not a mystery, and it's definitely not a conspiracy. Police made mistakes, did some dumb things, but is that crazy to think? The reality is, it's one man, Richard Allen, who inserted himself into the investigation. He lied to the people around him, and he eventually cracked under the weight of his own guilt. The evidence points to him. Now, maybe not one of these things on their own would convict him, but all of them together, it's over. There was physical evidence found. The unspent .40 caliber round found between the victims was forensically matched to Richard Allen's Sig Sauer P226. It was matched by a person who's been 100% accurate with matching guns to shell casings or bullets. Allen admitted to owning the firearm. There's also video and audio evidence. Libby German's video at 2:13 captures Bridge Guy walking directly behind the girls. There was a surveillance match, that type of evidence too, surveillance and vehicle match at 1:27 p.m. The Hoosier Harvest Store camera shows a dark vehicle driving towards a CPS lot, and it matches Rick Allen's 2016 Ford Focus SE hatchback. It's the only one matching vehicle registered in Carroll County at that time. And Rick Allen admitted he parked at the CPS building. There's eyewitness testimony, Allen's own statements and timelines. There's his multiple confessions. There's all the lies that he told, how he changed his alibi. And ultimately, each of the 6 criteria used by investigators matched only one person. Rick Allen was on the trails at the right time. Rick Allen walked on the bridge. Rick Allen wore the exact clothing as Bridge Guy. Rick Allen parked at the CPS lot. Rick Allen drove the exact car. Rick Allen owned the exact gun matched to the scene. Odds of anyone else fitting all 6 is 1 in 50 trillion.
Allen was sentenced to 130 years in prison and will die behind bars.
Case closed. Thanks for watching.